talk about distance and midpoint on the coordinate plane. This is formula driven. You need to memorize these formulas. They are not on a reference sheet. If they ask you a distance or a midpoint question on the EOC and you don't know the formulas, you're not going to be able to get those questions right. It is formula driven. And you need to memorize the formulas. It should be a formula that you're familiar with. You should have learned it in algebra. The distance on a coordinate plane is equal to the square root, parentheses x2 minus x1, parentheses squared, plus parentheses y2 minus y1, parentheses squared. It is just a formula, but it is a formula you need to memorize. I really recommend, remember when there's nothing over the top of something like RW, it's saying find the distance between R and W or find its length. I really recommend when they're doing this, at least until you've practiced with the formula, that you write the ordered pairs down. R is the ordered pair 3, 4. W is the ordered pair -4, -2. Remember, every ordered pair has an x value and a y value. So I'm going to label the first ordered pair x1, y1. And the second ordered pair I'm going to label x2 and y2. If you do that and you know this formula, it makes the rest of it just number crunching. You can just plug it into the formula. What can I replace x2 with? -4. Minus, what can I replace x1 with? 3. y2 I'm going to replace with -2 minus y1 I'm going to replace with 4. -4 minus 3 is -7. -2 minus 4? What is a -7 squared?
49.
And a -6 squared? Why would I put a wavy equal sign here? It's approximately equal to. I'm going to put in 85, and I'm going to hit square root, and you can see that that comes up to 9.21954, whatever. If I had to round this to the nearest hundredth, what would I round it to? 9.22. It came up to 9.2195, and we're going to round that to 9.22. 2, and it's approximately equal to. Now, I want to talk about calculators for a minute. This is the calculator that I would encourage everybody to get, this TI-30XA, because it's a calculator you're going to use on the EOC. Does anybody happen to have a different calculator with them today? If you would, take your calculator out and put in a -7 squared. What did yours give you? It gave you a -49. Mine gave me 49. What did yours give you? -49. Why does one calculator say that this is positive and one calculator say that it's negative?
One calculator squared 7 and then multiplied by 9.
That calculator does order of operations so well that when it looks at that, it says, I don't do subtraction first, I do exponents first, so it squares the 7 and leaves the negative there with it. To fix it on that calculator, you have to put it inside of parentheses. By the way, if you look at what I did, what do you see? My -7 is in parentheses. Because if I didn't put it that way, what it's telling me is that I'm only supposed to square the 7. To square a -7, it needs to be inside of parentheses. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've seen people make that mistake because they're using a calculator and they don't know how to square it on their own calculator. If you get the one that you're supposed to use on the EOC, which I strongly encourage, stop using your phone, stop using other calculators, get this one to practice with. That way, the day of the EOC, you won't have to go, where is that button? How do I key it in? Everybody good with the first example? Here's the second example then. Please don't take the time to draw the picture. They're asking me to find the distance between x, y. What am I going to write down first? I'm going to write down the ordered pairs, the coordinates, -4, 1 for x. And I'm going to write down 2, 0 for y. And I really recommend, until you have the formula memorized, that if you're using the formula, that you write it down. This is what's going to happen. It's going to look like this. I'm going to put in, I'm going to label these x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to replace x2 with 2 minus x1, which was a -4. But what's going to happen to that minus a negative? It's going to change to a positive. y2 is 0. Minus y1, which is 1. I now have 6 squared plus the -1 squared. What is 6 squared?
36.
And -1 squared is?
1.
This is the square root of 37. The square root of 37 6.0827 something. If I round to the nearest hundredth, what's this one going to be? 6.08. The reason it's approximately equal to is because a square root is an irrational number, unless you're taking the square root of something like 16, which is what? 4. If you're dealing with a perfect square, that's rational. Irrational means that it goes on and on and on forever, and it never even repeats. What's the most common irrational number that people think of? Pi. Okay? So, when you're dealing with square roots, we're often going to deal with an approximately equal to because it's an irrational number.
Does it matter which x and y you put first?
It does not matter which x and y you put first. This is what doesn't matter. If you start with 1 in the x value, make sure you start with the same y value. That matters. Okay? The distance from x to y is the same as the distance from y to x. That's why the order doesn't matter. But it does matter that you're not interchanging two things around. Everybody good with the second example? Midpoint then is also a formula. All that you need to write down is midpoint on a coordinate plane and the formula. You don't need to write the other sentence that's in there. What you need to know is how to find it. And because I'm looking for a midpoint on a coordinate plane, the midpoint will have an x value as well as a y value. So the formula looks like an ordered pair, because that's what it's going to help me find. The ordered pair of the midpoint on a coordinate plane. Just like working with the distance formula, until you get used to this, I would strongly encourage that you write down the ordered pairs for the two values. W is a -4, -2. R is 3, 4. And I would encourage you to label them x1, y1, x2, y2. Then when you go to find the midpoint, all you've got to do is plug in those values. What am I going to put in place of x1? -4. What am I going to put in place of x2? So I have a -4 plus 3 over 2. y1 I'm going to replace with -2 plus y2 I'm going to replace with a 4, and I'm going to divide it by 2. -4 plus 3, -1. So the x-coordinate of the midpoint is a -1/2. -2 plus 4, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So the ordered pair at M is a -1/2, comma, 1. Question? I certainly would be okay if you did this. I don't mind fractions as decimals so long as they're not some kind of repeating, so long as they end. Everybody good with this example? Can I go to the next page? Again, I would not draw the picture. I would merely write down the ordered pairs. What's the ordered pair for D? -1, 2. The ordered pair for E? 6, 1. The midpoint formula says x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. And just like the distance formula, until I had that formula memorized, I'd write it down every time I had to use it. The more times you write it, the quicker you're going to memorize it. Label your parts. x1, y1, x2, y2. Plug them into the formula. -1 plus 6 over 2. 2 plus 1 over 2. -1 plus 6, 5. 2 plus 1, 3. I'm okay if you leave it like that. I'm okay if you do this. And I'm okay if you do this. So long as it's a terminating decimal. I personally would stop right here. I wouldn't go any further. Anything that you do from this point is one more chance to make a mistake. So I'd leave it as an improper fraction. Everybody good? I'm going to do one more example then. I'm going to skip this one. They're both exactly the same. Sometimes they ask you to find a missing endpoint, but they give you a midpoint. So C, they're asking me to find what its x value and y value is. Remember, the midpoint formula says the midpoint would be equal to x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. What can I replace this midpoint with? I can replace it with what? The ordered pair, -2, 2. x1 and x2. I can replace one of them with a 2. The other one I'm going to let stay an x. y1 and y2. I can replace one of them with an 8. The other one I'm going to let stay y. This is then the equation for the x value of my coordinate. -2 is equal to 2 plus x over 2. This would be the y part of the equation. 2 equals 8 plus y over 2. And I'd solve these two equations. How would I get rid of this 2 that's in the denominator? I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. 2 times a -2 is -4. These would have canceled out, leaving me equals 2 plus x. Getting x by itself, I'd subtract 2 from both sides. I have x is equal to a negative 6, which means the x-coordinate for C is a negative 6. I'm going to do the same thing for my y-coordinate. I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and it's equal to 8 plus y, because these 2's are going to have canceled out. Subtracting 8 then from both sides, the y-coordinate of C is a negative 4. Everybody good? Your assignment is out of your workbook today. It is the 1-7 Form G. It's actually just page 27, numbers 5 through 22.